Hello, this is International Professional Communication. The focus, understanding self and groups. Understand yourself as well as groups as a means to understand diverse philosophies and cultures within and across societies. A major focus will be on developing a visualization of your personal learning network. If you've been in a class with me before, you have already developed a visualization of this, and you've used the tutorials that we have links for those on the Canvas site. But in this class, you're going to develop one and share it a couple of times. First, during this week on Understanding Self and Groups, and as part of the documentation for translation project that goes through, quite a chunk of crosses quite a chunk of time in this course, and you will be collaborating and partnered with a university or a student at the University of Trieste in Italy, and you'll begin to get to know each other by sharing your respective personal learning networks. So keep that in mind, that this will be something that you develop and use multiple times in this course. Again, to begin by looking at the week overall, the key readings, again, Varner and Beamer, and their slides, this chapter 4, a key resource there on understanding personal learning networks. You'll see the various exercises, the link to personal learning network tutorials and tools. That is a Moodle site. You can link on it there. I give a couple of suggestions as to possible tools to use in developing your PLN. Now, the work due there, I'll highlight at the end of this recording as well. But to begin, just zipping through the Varner and Beamer chapter, they begin by saying, in the Western world, awareness of self comes out in language use. As a part of this course, especially the week 2 on language as well, have you been listening more closely to your use of language, the identity that it projects, the cultural dimensions? Beginning on page 143, they talk about the basic unit of society, the individual or the collective. This is a key theme that we will discuss, and it will keep coming back throughout the course. A characteristic of individualist cultures is competitiveness. The corresponding value in collectivist cultures is cooperation. But I find a very good point on page 146. People in all cultures may be individualist in some contexts and collectivist in others. When I think of a collectivist culture, I see higher ed many times as parts that are collective and parts that are very individualistic. And we can talk more about that as well. Notice the cultural dimensions, again, that they continue to highlight and discuss in more detail. Age, gender, group membership. Is it temporary or permanent? On the later pages here, I believe they mention games, and I'll talk about just studying a culture's games and how that can be a very important, very great way to develop more insight about a culture. But let's get started. Some pictures, again, from my travels in Peru in this case. Okay. Understanding self and groups. Something that I came to understand, and it was actually, you see the woman laughing in the upper left, because she, through my limited use of language and her helping me, I realized that the criticality of these hats, because I was wondering why women, especially in these markets, always have, especially in certain cases, a very specific hat, like the upper right, that white hat, lower right, that darker, the black hat. They were the means of measurement, okay, so that how much of the vegetable there, the leafy, you could buy, depended on how many hats you would fill, and then she would fill the hat and then you would buy accordingly. But again, you have to observe and obviously do your best. I appreciated in an earlier posting, I think Jessamina, you said maybe it was in week 2 of the course, you talked about the importance of having humor. And just the need to laugh at your own mistakes and to just do your best. Consider this scenario. You've begun work as a female and a foreigner in a corporation in Japan. You've been invited to a coworker's home for an evening meal with the team, all male workers. You enjoy the meal, and afterwards, when the woman or the host clears the table, you jump up to help her. She quickly gestures that you should stay seated, and you never see her again that evening. In fact, over the next set of years, you never again are allowed to help. This is a true scenario. This is a true story from my work. I needed to learn a great deal about the cultural value dimension, collectivism. You are in the midst of interviewing 1 or 2, however many people you can from your target culture. What are you learning? What have you learned about self-identity in the culture you're investigating? What about group identity? Now this week in the course forum, be sure to discuss the cultural dimension of individualism, collectivism, in relation to the culture you're investigating. How is being indebted or obligated to someone for favors valued in your target country? Perhaps you can discuss the value of age, seniority, attitudes towards age, gender, and so on. Varner and Beamer's key questions again, self-identity. In these pictures from my experience, is the basic unit of society individual or collective? Is seniority valued or discounted? Are women equals, subordinates? The upper right is when I and my son on the far right were visiting my daughter. In the middle there, she was serving on a Fulbright in Morocco. This was the second level of the home. Very unusual to allow a man to be in this room. However, because my son was still considered more youth, he was allowed to come in and be part of the collective meal, with the one large bowl of couscous and the chicken and things in the center, and we could all eat in a collective fashion. In contrast, then look at the bottom picture. Can you find me? This is a long time ago, but this was during work in Japan, and my mother and father came to visit. Can you locate my mother? But notice, is seniority valued or discounted? Notice the arrangement of the very important formal picture of that evening. Self. How do we understand self? In the business world, there's quite a bit of literature on emotional intelligence. It's an ability to recognize, understand, and use emotional information about yourself that leads to or causes, your more effective performance. In contrast to social intelligence, cognitive intelligence, we looked at cultural intelligence during week 1. I have several links to emotional intelligence diagnostics on the Canvas site. Please choose one of them, or investigate and use the Bennett scale for intercultural sensitivity. But for sure, choose one, use it. Begin to understand self and groups. Varner and Beamer, social organization. Is group membership temporary or permanent? Are personal matters private or public? What about that social organization? In this particular case, it's a picture, again, from Morocco. I'm sitting in a restaurant with my children. We're eating, and all of a sudden we see this person in the group. Study it. Who belongs to the group? Is it a temporary or a permanent setting? Last summer, I had the privilege of serving on, in this case, a mission trip in Tanzania, in Africa. Just a few pictures from that in terms of organization, social organization. The largest picture here, it was a women's cooperative. And they had a very clear organization. If you can see this paper kind of right here, and the paper she sort of has inside here, this woman was the keeper of the documentation and the rules. Every single woman at the beginning of the meeting recited their commitment to the social organization and to the rules of the cooperative. But as I studied and watched the meeting along with here my colleague on the trip, this woman was clearly in charge of the direction, whether or not this group would say yes to what they were being shown and the possibility of using this particular agricultural instrument. Some other things that were interesting, I attended a wedding, and the social organization of gifting at the wedding was much like you would see a rotation in an offering, perhaps at a church. And were the relationships temporary or permanent? I had the privilege of developing, close relationships. I hope they can be more permanent, obviously. It's a long ways away. But again, one person in the class asked, in this course, do you need to have had an international experience to be in this course? Of course not. The key is to study these cultural dimensions and use them in our daily work and as well as in our international, our perhaps current and future international work in your professions. Okay. I really kind of enjoy this next set of slides. Examine games. Okay, so you're looking at your culture. What is its game? What are the basics of that game? How does it work? What countries or cultures play that game? But most important, how does the game offer an understanding of the culture's social, cultural, and symbolic identification? What kind of game is China playing? I would say it's pretty darn important for us to know this and dig into it and better understand Go, a game of complexity. Learn how to play it. Who among you knows how to play this game? Hey, if you do, please share more about exactly how it works. Wang Zhangchoi, Chansu Lee, different people from South Korea that have taken this class. Very interesting when they would describe how with the game of Go in their culture and how they were clearly taught by a grandfather and how that, that training continued. Very interesting. Chess. What chess can teach you about business, even if you've never played. Chess. Two opponents, opposite sides. The goal is to checkmate the other king. Who among you knows how to play chess? What type of culture does it signal? What does it teach you about how to approach business and international communication with that culture? Mancala, It literally means to transfer in Arabic. The aim is to move your stones around so you can capture more stones than your opponent. Who knows how to play Mancala or Oware? I had the privilege of watching. I didn't get a picture of it. So these are pictures from the web, but this picture on the left is exactly how I saw any number of people playing it in Tanzania, and had the privilege of them gesturing to say, "Hey, come and join us and let's play," and that was great. So discuss this scenario in your course forum. Okay, you have a colleague that is moving to work in another country. You meet with your colleague and visit about this new work. You've been in this course, so you ask about the games that country or culture plays. Choose the country and discuss how does the game offer an understanding of the corresponding culture's social, cultural, and symbolic identification. Okay, personal learning networks, I mentioned that earlier. The PLN, this is a direct link again to the Moodle site that explains them in more detail for those who have not yet developed a visualization of your personal learning network. The article, Understanding Personal Learning Networks, their structure, content, and networking skills, a great piece by this set of authors. The work due this week, hey, be sure to meet with me. This will be via a Google Hangout. Either the 7th or the 9th. The sign up is right on the Canvas site. It's about a 20-minute. Let's have a quick meeting. We'll have several of these throughout the course. If times listed there do not work, let me know what time does. I look forward to the discussion leaders, their postings. Please also respond to some of the questions that I've posed here. Most important, your comparative analysis paper, your draft is due on Wednesday. And then you will have 2 days to complete a peer review of one other student's draft using the Canvas system. And I will work to provide a tutorial. I think actually someone from the Liberal Arts Lattice group, Emily Stoll-Richardson, it will be something I think that she's going to put together for us. Thank you. Look forward to the continued work.